Good morning. Welcome to the Long Live Third Parties podcast. Free Press Media Press, Inc., a third-party books publisher, sponsors this podcast. I am Andrew Bouchard. Today I read the case, Libertarian Party of Michigan versus Johnson, 714 F3D 929, Court of Appeals, 6th Circuit, 2013. Friends, we're going to talk about the Libertarian Party and the Republican Party in this case. And we see how the two interact with each other. So let's discuss it. This case involved Libertarian candidate Gary Johnson, whom I voted for in 2016, versus Ruth Johnson of the Republican Party of Michigan. It doesn't state it in the case, but I would assume they have no relation, given that Johnson is probably the most common name in the United States. They might have a relation, and that would make this quite the issue. But I don't see anything in this case saying they do have a relation. In this case, our friend Gary Johnson wanted to get on the Libertarian Party ballot, but they wouldn't let him because he sought nomination in the Republican Party. And unfortunately, as we know, he did not win that primary. So they have in Michigan what they call a sore loser law. And they try to deny him based on that. Let's read from the record. They say, quote, Gary Johnson, a former two-term governor of New Mexico, ran for president of the United States in the 2012 election. He initially sought the Republican Party nomination, confirming with the Michigan Secretary of State Ruth Johnson on November 8, 2011, that he would be placed on the primary ballot as a Republican candidate. However, in December 2011, he changed his mind and decided to seek the nomination of the Libertarian Party instead. Although he had been informed of the statutory withdrawal deadline, Gary Johnson submitted his affidavit stating he was no longer a presidential candidate of the Republican Party 3 minutes too late. Because his withdrawal was untimely, Gary Johnson's name appeared on the Michigan primary ballot as a Republican Party candidate. End quote. And then it says, quote, Johnson was subsequently nominated as the Libertarian Party's presidential candidate at the National Libertarian Party Convention on May 3rd to 6th, 2012. On May 3rd, 2012, the Michigan Secretary of State notified Johnson that under Michigan's sore loser law, that he could not appear on the Michigan ballot as the Libertarian Party's candidate since he had run and lost as a candidate in the Republican Party primary. End quote. Friends, first of all, what do you think about the sore loser law? I've heard about sore loser laws in other states. So what do you think about Michigan's sore loser law and other states' sore loser law? I wonder how often it happens. Sometimes there's overlap between people who walk with the two parties and then go to a third party. Sometimes there's people who stay in the third party their entire career. So I wonder how much overlap it is. I'm assuming there's a significant amount because, for example, I saw on the SAM party page, they have a section dedicated to election reforms, and one of which is repeal of sore loser laws. It says here, he missed the deadline 3 minutes too late for the Republican Party. That sounds strict, but they're sticking to the rules. When he was in the Republican Party, we don't care too much about what happens to the Republican Party. We care about what happens to the third parties. That has to be one of the closest deadlines I've seen, if not the closest. I remember in one case of the New Alliance Party we read on this podcast, it was 2 hours late. 3 minutes. That's missing it by the hair. I imagine that would make a good movie. Trying to film that and him dashing there but missing it by 3 minutes. But Providence had it. Gary Johnson was not to be a Republican, but a third-party candidate. So we salute Gary Johnson's seizure of his providence, his destiny to be in third parties. A lot of this case centers on them discussing whether these laws should be considered. They talk about how in election cases the issues are often resolved. The election happens and then there's constitutional and legal issues that need to be resolved, so they want to keep considering these issues for future repeat. They mentioned in the election, our friend Gary Johnson because of this, he wasn't able to make the ballot as a Libertarian, but people still wrote him in and he got 7,774 votes. So good job, Gary Johnson. They don't talk too much about the validity of the sore losers laws here, but they ultimately conclude as follows. Quote, the district court thoroughly and correctly evaluated the arguments of the parties on the merits. After reviewing the record, the parties' briefs, and the applicable law, we determined that no jurisprudential purpose would be served by a panel opinion on the merits. Therefore, we affirm the district court's judgment for the reasons stated in its September 10th, 2012 opinion and order. End quote. So friends, let's think about these sore loser laws. Would they ever apply to you? Would you ever seek nomination in one of the two parties, and then if you didn't get it, you go to a third party? Or are you a third party person all the way? Some people are going to say you vote two parties no matter what. Some people like us may say third parties no matter what. Other people go back and forth. I've known people who do go back and forth. So what are you like, friends? I'm glad to see the Libertarian Party of Michigan fighting this in the courts. That's exactly what we need. Long live third parties. Goodbye.